Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain and welcome to the Girl Meets World review. It's been a while since we've talked about this show, so today we're doubling up with my thoughts on both of the last two episodes. And spoiler warnings now because review, not too much else to say, so let's jump right in first with Girl Meets Bear. I'm not going to spend too much time on the plot for this episode because it's purposely and in my mind intelligently bear in that area. Get it? Because bear also... Alright, no more bear puns. So Riley loses her stuffed teddy bear, one that she's had almost her entire life, which means tacos need to be put on hold to search for him. What results is a beautifully captured metaphor as to how the bear and losing it relates to childhood, moving forward, and growing up, the themes that have become the most prevalent throughout this season. Every single character has great moments in this one, and the way they utilize the past of not just Cory and Topanga, but even Zay, is all well done because of how the next generation of coming-of-age main characters relate to the past generation. Cory and the boxing gloves he got from his dad in Boy Meets World, Lucas's great story of how his poppy gave him a sack of gold that he still hasn't opened, and Farkle relating to the way both him and Topanga grew in maturity in their respective shows, it all works and then some. And unlike the whole Zay cookie situation, which provided little to no emotional weight or added anything interesting or nuance to his character, here we can clearly see why this bear means so much to Riley, and thus the emotional blow over losing it actually carries proper weight. And speaking of Zay, he did a much better job here at conveying that added nuance that he didn't deliver in the previous episode through his interactions with Maya, which then leads to the end situation that too many people are likely overly focusing on, as opposed to the beautifully captured first 20 minutes or so. That having been said though, coming from the perspective of someone who still could not care less about ships and the wars that follow them, it was a nice moment for both characters involved, and Zay's logic here makes sense as directly opposed to the shakier logic that led Maya to realizing that her feelings for Lucas were apparently make-believe once upon a time. And that's all I'm going to say about that. All in all, this episode was beautiful, brilliant, and added so much of these characters without needing anything more than one set and carefully measured dialogue and interactions. Everyone played their part well. Even Maya's taco-deprived breakdowns I thought were funny, and it does so well to build on the coming-of-age overarching narrative that defines this entire show. As much as I wish Smackle was in every episode, I understand not having her around this time because it felt like all the pieces that needed to be there were present, Josh included, so I'm not sure she would have added too much to this particular episode just within the context of how it's framed. But even still, I'd call this the second best episode of the season behind Upstate, and a legitimate argument could be made to call it number one. It's just that good. And to cap off Girl Meets Bear with a personal touch, I too have something from my childhood that I still keep with me and consider sacred, the Lost Galaxy Megazord. And with that, let's turn our attention to Girl Meets the Great Lady of New York. I don't normally do this, but with this particular episode, I'm going to start by saying that Girl Meets the Great Lady of New York is damn near perfect. It embraces its subject matter in a flawless way, doesn't generalize or marginalize any of the characters present, and it seamlessly showcases the best parts about America as a nation in addition to giving proper weight to the trials and tribulations of other nations and cultures. The episode starts in the classroom where the topic of the day is culture, and with it comes a valuable role for Nigel, one of the, until recently, voiceless faces of the classroom. An assignment comes in the form of digging deeper into your culture, and from said assignment, we get a lot of genuinely hilarious moments from the cast. The Don't Mess with Texas bit was great humor from Zay and Lucas. The Maya presentation about all things stereotypically Irish was right up her alley comedically, and also a blast because it was intentionally underrepresenting her own culture, because that's the lesson here. Mr. Matthews is obviously none too pleased with the end result of his assignment, so he urges the class, or at least the main characters, to dig deeper, because Farkle was the only one who seemed to do any digging at all. And oh boy, will we ever get to that reveal. The side plot this time around was actually well presented, because it felt very believable that Augie would experience culture through meeting a new friend. Said friend comes from Cuba, and I was pleasantly surprised by how well he carried himself as an actor for someone so young. He's got legitimate screen presence, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of his character at all, especially compared to Doy or even Ava, quite honestly. Not too much more to say about this side plot, but its lighter tone compared to what's to come was well handled and very fitting of an Augie-Topanga driven plot point, except that it's flat out better and inherently more important than most Augie-Topanga plot points. So all of the main characters go digging a bit further into their history, and all of a sudden, I find myself again asking where Smackle is. I would have loved to hear more about her own culture and background, and I think that would have made a valuable perspective in its own right, especially considering that Smackle hasn't been given nearly enough chances to be more than a man-gawker recently, but that's a minor complaint all things considered because of what this episode in its entirety means. When we're at the culture fair, we get to experience a little bit of Cambodian history, and why Nigel's grandmother had to leave it. She was one of the lucky ones, because as we know, not everyone was able to make it out. They were not pulling punches with this one. This is a Disney Channel show openly admitting that death occurred, and that take on it wasn't even the most emotionally jarring part of this episode. So Maya and Riley deliver their updated cultural reports, and it's evident that the lesson about digging deeper and telling your story was understood. And then, things get heavy in a hurry. Farkle finally lets us in as to why he's been so troubled about digging deeper into his past. His ancestors were Jewish and lived in Europe around the time period of World War II, and many of those ancestors didn't survive. Let's just leave it at that. And that's the double Girl Meets World review, and Lord Almighty did this show take a massive swing in the right direction. The episodes leading up to these two were pretty good, but nothing world-shattering, but these two episodes, for two different reasons, are easily, for me, the best of the season, with Upstate probably going right in between the two. When I said that Girl Meets the Great Lady of New York was near perfect, I meant it. They completely dropped the ball on communism back in season 2, but this time around, they completely nailed the national and international points. The show understands why America is so great, and has less to do with freedom or liberty or justice, and more to do with the beautiful way that we can experience a myriad of cultures, perspective, points of view every single day. If you've been around my channel long enough, then you also know that the idea of being able to share and embrace the perspectives of others and learn and grow as a direct result is the basis of everything I try to do. Not so much cultural ideas necessarily, but ideas nonetheless, so it shouldn't be a huge shock that I took the message of this episode to heart. And it wasn't just blind patriotism either. It gave pretty good footing to all cultures involved, asked important questions, and challenged not just the cast, but us as a viewership to look deeper. And looking at things deeper is literally 90% of what I do, so I have nothing but love for an episode that demands that we all do the same. All of that would have made this a truly great episode, but adding to that is the way that Nigel's grandmother's story is handled, a handling later paralleled in the form of Farkle digging deeper into his own story, and it creates one of the most emotionally affecting moments of the show thus far. I didn't think I would ever feel this way again, but there it was, the same way I felt when Farkle was bullied, and then later when Farkle was dealing with potentially having Asperger's. It was that times 10. This episode was pure greatness, and probably the single most important topic Girl Meets World as a series has handled to this point. All of the elements of a great episode of this particular show are present and then dialed to 11 with the magical way they work through the central themes, and in doing so, once again, advance the characters in such meaningful ways. If you love this show, then you need to experience both episodes I reviewed today, but none more so than The Great Lady of New York. It currently stands as the best episode of Season 3 for me, and arguably the third or fourth greatest episode of all time. If you haven't watched it, fix that, and if you have, watch it again. Pay attention to it, understand it, grow from it, and then share what you've learned with the world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this double-decker review, leave a like, sub for more, and share the beauty of culture everywhere. And don't forget to follow the Disney Brain on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Links down below. Guys, video number 100 is only days away. It's nearly time to get our heads in the game, so a pretty big milestone to look forward to. Until then...
No! Bagpipes are Scottish, not Irish.
Potato, potato.
What a bunch of jerks.